Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm Dan Shaheen. I can hear you out there asking, Dan, why so blue, buddy? Well, I get blue when I start reading stuff like Doomsday Clock number 12. This thing is super late, and it's yet the latest in another of a long line of what I like to call Watchmen babies. But what's really interesting, what you might want to stick around for, while it wasn't a great comic, there's some really interesting stuff in here that portends uh, things to come for the DC universe in general. Let's find out today on Comic Book News. Welcome to the show. Doomsday Clock number 12, written by Jeff Johns with art by Gary Frank. So this was the book that promised a merging of the Watchmen and the DC universe. Basically going to bring in a bunch of those properties and keep milking that Watchmen sacred cow. Take one of the greatest graphic novels of all time, written by arguably the greatest writer in all of comics, and against his will, just keep milking it and milking it. Basically, proving everything that he says about corporations and etc. Right? So, but wait a minute. Why jawbone about it? When we spend $1 million on $1 million comics cam. I mean, for heaven's sake, I'm complaining about corporations, but without corporations, we wouldn't have the $1 million comics cam, right? Am I right or am I right? I'm right. So let's talk about Doomsday Clock. I'm going to recap it. I'm not going to go over every little detail, but I'm going to go over some of the stuff that I found really interesting. Anyway, it's Superman versus Dr. Manhattan in the battle to end it all. This is a world that was without Superman. Dr. Manhattan's been toying around with the universe, bringing the concept of Superman in and out, seeing what makes this metaverse, as he's calling it, tick. And what he's discovered is Superman is at the very core of the metaverse. And we'll discuss that. So as we go, we get a knockdown, drag out superhero battle with the superheroes that did exist in this world. And Superman has been framed for killing some people in Russia. Anyway, so he's getting in a big battle. Meanwhile, our new Rorschach. This is the son of the psychiatrist who treated Rorschach in the first Watchmen book. Why? I'm not really sure. He's a weird character, and I'm not sure what he brings, and it gets even weirder. So there's some racism stuff here as he's just minding his own business and is basically confronted by someone for being black on the street. And the battle rages in Kandak, and we get to see, or in Washington rather, and we get to see beautiful artwork by Gary Frank. Right, this guy is a top tier artist. I think he could be drawing any superhero book he wants, and we'd be loving it. I would love almost anything more than this book because we waited years for this, and it's not something that I think that I'll be revisiting. Unlike Watchmen, which I tend to reread 1 or 2 times a year, maybe. Anyway, we keep going and we keep seeing what's going on here as basically Manhattan is coming to realize that Superman is at the core of this universe, and you think they're gonna fight, but our expectations are basically subverted, as they don't. We can see Gary Frank, man, he can do an incredible, spot on imitation of Dave Gibbons when he wants to, but then the other stuff is distinctly his and really nice to look at. I think he's a fantastic artist. I again wish he was working on something a little better than this. We get a lot of rumination and thinking about what it means to be Rorschach and what it means to be Superman and Dr. Manhattan, and they finally battle and they come to terms. And but Dr. Manhattan says, finally figures out, I understand, everything ends. Basically a callback to the end of Watchmen, and he basically blacks out and destroys the DC universe. All gone. For now, until it's reborn, and it's always reborn, as it always is, with the destruction of Krypton and Superman coming to Earth. Comes to Earth, and apparently he's come to Earth many times over many eras, including prehistoric eras and the caveman and then the ice age and all the way up into modern times, until eventually, it happened in our more modern era, into 1938, and we'll see that ended up becoming, well, we'll see. Basically, we get more battle, and we get to see now Superman backed up by this whole DC universe, including the all-new Legion of Superheroes, who didn't exist. A couple issues ago, the Saturn Girl was wearing her old outfit and disappeared from the universe, and now they've brought, since then, because this book is so late, Legion of Superheroes got rebooted, and so this had to be redrawn or drawn in at the last minute or changed or altered, certainly, to bring in the universe. And why do we care? Because this really is trying to set up what DC continuity has been about and what it's going to be about going forward. Let's pay attention. So basically, after 1938 is when our Superman, the Action Comics #1 happened. And then decades later, The Flash came, basically. A police scientist struck by lightning and the birth of the Speed Force rattles the metaverse. Superman's timeline shifts forward and reality divides for the first time, creating the multiverse. This is the dawn of the Silver Age. Okay? So we went from Golden Age Superman, suddenly we had Silver Age Superman in the 50s, and they brought back the new Flash. We had the Golden Age Flash and the Justice Society. They existed in this universe. Anyway, Earth 2 is born, which includes characters like the Huntress, daughter of Batman, in this universe, by the way. And then after the first and greatest crisis, no kidding, the Earth divides again. Earth 1 becomes Earth 1985, a world unexplored even today. That's an exciting thing. The post-crisis DC universe, that's where I got started with DC, reading DC, with the new Flash and After the Crisis and Blue Beetle and all that new stuff. And it was the best crisis. It was the reboot of Superman by John Byrne. It was the best because what they did is they did not continually layer cruft on top of cruft. The idea was to strip away the cruft and make it simpler, an entry point for new readers. And man, they succeeded. What they've done in these new crises is they want to have it both ways. They want to make things streamlined and start continuity over, but they also want to preserve all that stuff. And that's why in the current DC universe, there's 5 Robins and just so many things. How many Superboys or variations of the Superboy idea are there? They got to get rid of that junk quick. Anyway, Earth 1985, that was great. Becomes a world unexplored even today. And now I understand why these Earths exist. Every time there's a change in the metaverse, the multiverse grows to preserve every era of Superman. More are created over the years, including one because of my interference. After the Flashpoint and the Rebirth, Earth 52 is out there. I look beyond now. Now, this alludes to Jeff Johns, who I believe, and I talked about in my other review of Watchmen way back when, that Jeff Johns is a stand-in in this book for Dr. Manhattan. He views the character as himself, and that Manhattan's role in creating and reshaping the DC universe here is like what Jeff Johns sees his role as in shaping the universe. Don't believe me? Let's keep watching it. I think maybe you will. Anyway, okay, now in the year 2020, Superman's timeline is bombarded by the reckless energies of the old gods, once again warping the metaverse. What does that mean? That's now. That's Superman now. Who are these old gods that he's talking about? Is this the old guard creative team? Is this the Dan Didio, Jim Lee era that's been sort of just rebooting recklessly and changing things crazily, just trying to get any kind of traction? Perhaps because of their new corporate overlords have changed since AT&T bought what is now DC Comics. Anyway, that's now. But now it's July 2nd, 2025. This is where it starts to get interesting, folks. Bear with me. A crisis unlike the metaverse has ever seen, they will call Time Masters erupts. But in its wake, Superman is revitalized. So Superman hasn't been vital for a long time. Maybe a knock on Bendis and the creative stuff that's going on right now and saying that it's going nowhere. Maybe not. And his greatest allies return. Who we see a lot of people, but these seem like the usual suspects. Including, I think, shoehorned in, again, the new Saturn Girl design. No matter how many times Superman's existence is attacked, he will survive, even if change is constant. Because hope is the North Star of the metaverse. Pay attention. It is January 2026. The timeline is restored. Earth 5G is born. It is June 17th, 2026. Superman goes on a quest to find Bruce Wayne's lost daughter so she can save Bruce's son. I believe this is an allusion to the upcoming DC 5G event, which I don't know details about, but apparently it takes place in the not too distant future, and I think that's what this is talking about here. But the most interesting thing, and the thing that's setting the world abuzz right now, is on July 10th, 2030, the Secret Crisis begins, throwing Superman into a brawl across the universe with Thor himself and a green behemoth stronger than even Doomsday, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. In its wake, Superman's timeline shifts forward again. So what is he saying? Is he alluding to a Marvel DC crossover in the comics? Or could this be more? I mean, who knows? With the, like I said, with the shaky corporate ownership of DC, those properties could be up for grabs. Disney would be silly not to try and snap them up and merge all of the superhero universes into, what could arguably be the craziest, most sprawling, weirdest cinematic universe of all time. I'd watch that. Anyhow, we go forward and we get to see Superman messing with Superman again and again and talking about going forward into the future, 2038, and he's born, and this time his parents he's got a brother. Superman has a brother, Colin, and different variations on the theme. Anyway, we go through and we come out to Ozymandias, Adrian Veidt, who's basically like, oh, I knew it. I knew if I could just get Superman and Dr. Manhattan together, it would all straighten everything out. Okay. And he does something here. I guess he teleported them all here with his tachyon, blah, blah, blahs, whatever. And immediately the comedian who's here shoots him. And Lex Luthor pulls out his super vibrator thingamajig and vibrates him back into his own dimensional universe plane, whatever, back to where he's flying out the window, getting killed in Watchmen. Lame, but okay, at least we're spared the comedian. We're not gonna have to suffer through a bunch of comedian appearances going forward in the DC universe. And I think we don't need those. We don't need any more of those. Next, we get to see new Rorschach, who comes in, and Vade is shot and hurt, and is he gonna die? Well, no. Rorschach pulls off his mask and, going against type, instead of killing him, he uses the mask as a bandage to save him and says, no, you'll live to pay for your crimes, rot in prison. And he says, you're not Rorschach. He says, no, Rorschach is me. So this is the all-new, all-different kind of DC Rorschach, who I think we're going to have to suffer through. Batman, inspired him and gave him the mask. Said, you can make this mask mean something different. People are terrified of it, blah, blah, blah. You can be a hero like me. So now we're going to have we've already got 3 different versions of the question, I think, running around. Vic Sage plus Renee Montoya and whoever else and a couple of other. And now we've got a Rorschach in there too. Great, because Rorschach is the character everyone loves, of course, from Watchmen. But we can't have him be a smelly, super right-wing Republican type guy like he is in Watchmen. We've got to, let's PC him up a little bit. Let's make him a person of color, and let's make him he doesn't kill or torture people. He's a good guy, right? Because that's what Rorschach's all about. They really get Rorschach, huh? Yuck. Anyway, we get to see, moving forward, one thing that seems to have happened, that seems to have shaken out here, is that Clark is going with Lois, and they're talking about this stuff, and they go to pick up... Oh, there's all this stuff with the actor, Nathaniel, whatever, who I feel was added to this story to try and add some kind of, literary merit to the story, but it was kind of boring and lame, and I didn't really enjoy that part, but whatever. But he says, I affected Superman's world, and it sure looks like Clark Kent's parents have been brought back to life in this universe where they've been gone. So what we're not seeing here is anything about the fact that Clark Kent just revealed his secret identity yesterday. So the Legion happened a month ago. So I guess this Doomsday Clock, the end of this, happened right here in the middle. between the debut of the new Legion of Superheroes but right before Superman reveals his identity. But then again, he didn't reveal his identity. His parents weren't involved in that at all. They're not even mentioned there. So is this continuity or what? I'm confused. And it's not going to get any less confusing, folks, because going forward, we're treated to something weird that's happened. It's not super clear, but it seems to me like, this part of the story, and I don't even recall all the details, is this the muse, the maid, the mime and the muse, or whoever, the mime and the marionette, rather, had a baby that was taken from them. And John is like, no, you're not going to get that baby again, but you're pregnant now. You're going to have a girl. Everything's going to be great. It sure looks like what happened is Dr. Manhattan went back in time, took this baby, and now raised him to adulthood. Thankfully, not naked the entire time, but here he is playing at the park naked with his baby. I don't know how well that's going to go over. Later on, he puts on a suit to take him to Mars or whatever. Grows this baby to a certain point, and then says he imbues it with the last remaining bits of his power. And he knows that the kid is going to help a woman that he loved, but somehow he can't see the future clearly right now anymore anyway. So he's just going to leave it at that and disappear. And the last thing he does, the last final crap here on us is we go to Night Owl and Silk Spectre, and they've got a kid named Sally, named after Sally Jupiter, original Silk Spectre, and who shows up at their door but this kid who says, I'm sorry to bother you, but a friend of your mom and dad's brought me here. He said they'll know what to do. He says, my name's Sally, what's yours? John calls me Clark. And here we go. We've got another last piece. We couldn't get rid of Dr. Manhattan and just leave him out of the DC universe. We had to bring in another, what I like to call the Watchmen babies, right? What's a Watchmen baby?
Mr. Moore, will you sign my DVD of Watchmen Babies? Which of the babies is your favorite?
You see what those bloody corporations do? They take your ideas and they suck them. Suck them like leeches until they've gotten every last drop of the marrow from your bones.
Hey, Teacup, why don't you chill out?
Very well. Oh, little Lulu, I love you, Lou, just the same.
So, yeah, Alan Moore, obviously not a fan of this stuff. This was done totally against his will, just like the Watchmen TV show that's going on right now that I know a lot of people are enjoying and say is pretty good. I have not watched it yet. I may or may not. I honestly, I've not liked a single Watchmen sequel, prequel, spin-off, adaptation, or whatever. I love The Watchmen. I read that book every year, a couple times a year sometimes. I've got my original first printing of the graphic novel that I keep and I look through all the time. I mean, it's like, imagine if they take, like, Moby Dick. And Moby Dick, they made a crappy Michael Bay version of the movie, and then did like a million spin-offs and prequels with Queequeg and sequels with Son of Ahab and just spinning it off forever and ever and ever. You wouldn't do that. Moby Dick is a literary masterpiece. I'm going to argue that Watchmen qualifies as one of those too, and you probably should stop messing with it. And they will as soon as people stop buying this stuff. So maybe I'm partially to blame. Maybe you're to blame for watching the show or the movies or whatever. You know what you are to blame for is for the success of this channel. Hey, we're growing like a weed. We finally smashed the 500 subscriber barrier, and we're on that quest for 1,000 subscribers with your help. I know we're going to get there because you're one of the most fun and engaged and engaging audiences in comic book YouTube land, right? Great stuff goes on in these comment sections. I read every single comment and I respond to an awful lot of them. So please keep the commentary coming. If you're not already subscribed, please take a moment and click that subscribe button. If you want to get notifications of my videos, you can click that little bell and you can personalize it and get some notifications, or you can get notifications of every single video I drop. I've got a bunch of stuff. A bunch of comics came out this week, so I'm going to be doing kind of probably a combined video for the 4 or 5 X-Men books that came out this week, one of which I did not read. Spoiler alert. But we're going to be reviewing lots of stuff, throwback reviews. We're going to be having a lot of fun, but it is the holidays. If you can't tell, I'm a little under the weather, so bear with me, guys. Production might be a little choppy in the next couple weeks, but I promise great things in the year 2020 for comic book news with your help. So, again, thanks for subscribing and engaging and supporting this channel. Most of all, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.